So you think the decision to cut the gas off, that it was hatched within the EU itself, or
Yeah.
was this more a
Well,
Zelensky
okay.
decision or a
Yeah.
US decision or
I think it's
everybody
actually
together?
it's all of the above. Yeah, it's clear that Zelensky is very happy about it. I mean, that's very much in keeping with his approach. Again, it hurts probably Ukraine more than any other country. Um, um, but he is just part of this nihilistic, lashing out at Russia. He declared it was a great victory. We're not getting cheap gas anymore because they were getting gas. They're also getting the transit fees, which is basically free money. He says, like, no more free money. That was $800 million a year. And then there was also, again, the gas at, very cheap gas. So now we're getting expensive gas and we lost our free money, and that's a great victory, right? Yeah. So anyway, but that's typical of him. So yeah, I think it's all of the above. The U.S. has actually been waging war on gas pipelines, going all the way from back then. It was the Soviet Union in the 80s. All the way back in the 80s, they've when some of these first pipelines were built, including the Druzhba, the one that was recently cut, whose flow was cut, the one that passes through Ukraine. Even back then, the U.S. didn't like it. They've always seen it as a priority to cut these economic relations, especially the energy relationship between Europe and Russia. So it's so obviously to Europe's advantage, and to increase Europe's dependence on the U.S., which again is to Europe's disadvantage. But it's something that makes some sort of cruel geopolitical sense from the perspective of the U.S. It makes no sense from Europe's perspective or Ukraine's, but they've just they've gone along with it. They're converts to Western hegemony, even when it's not to their own benefit.
So this gas that got cut off, was this primarily gas that was headed towards Slovakia and Hungary, just these two countries specifically?
Well, those were the main recipients, is my understanding. Also, Moldova. Moldova, yeah, I just realized I said that. Moldova, but some of it went all the way down to Austria, I believe, and there may be some to Serbia. I'm not sure. So it didn't. And again, as I think we said last time, by cutting this off, you're not only hurting those countries, because you have reduced the general supply to all of Europe. And so the whole European market is going to be affected by that. It's going to raise prices. It already has raised prices, through the futures market throughout Europe. And it has an impact actually worldwide. It even has repercussions, will have repercussions, possibly in the U.S. But yeah, probably gas market, no. But, the oil market, if more efforts are to cut the flow of oil, it will. And the U.S. is trying to do that through those, the sanctions on the shadow fleet. The whole energy market is global. It's interconnected. So it's not, again, I think so many of these European leaders are economically illiterate. So they think, we deprived gas to our enemies, to Viktor Orban and Robert Fico, great victory for us. And they don't understand that by just reducing the general supply, and they reduce it by, I've seen 3.5%, 5%. That's actually, it's a significant amount. And they don't understand that they've reduced it to all of Europe. So all of Europe is going to suffer, including Germany, again, the industrial heartland of Europe. When you're talking about, let's just call it 4%, to pluck a number in the middle of that range. When a market is already tight, you reduce something by 4%, it's going to cause more than a 4% rise in prices. It's just a well-established economic fact. I don't know how much higher it's going to go, but it's going to be significant.
Are there any options for Slovakia or Hungary or just Europe in general in getting other gas or other energy? I mean, this is the lifeblood to any economy is
Right.
Energy, the base input for everything. So what are their options?
Well, their options are Okay, there's only one pipeline that's still functioning, and that's the Turk Stream, which goes through Istanbul. And Russian gas is entering Europe through there. So that will continue. There may be a little excess capacity. They might be able to increase the flow somewhat, but not by very much. And then there's LNG. And the problem is LNG is just considerably more expensive. And they've been buying a lot of LNG. I think their number one supplier is the U.S., but their number two supplier is Russia. So it's really silly. They stopped getting gas from Russia, the cheap gas through the pipelines, and they're buying it. So they're forced to buy more LNG, the more expensive form of gas from Russia. Now you have people, of course, like within the European Commission that are upset that Europe is still purchasing Russian gas. And so
purchasing it directly?
Yeah.
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 So then it's just so stupid.
I know the whole thing. Yeah, I know the whole thing is so stupid, but it's just beyond stupid, and it's self-destructive. It's just like it's almost like you're talking about somebody, a mental patient that has some sort of self-harm impulse, right? This is, what are you doing? What are you depriving yourself of the lifeblood of your own economy? It's like you're kind of slitting your own arteries and watching the blood flow out. It's the same kind of behavior. So yeah, they are getting LNG from Russia. It's a significant amount, but there are powerful people in the European Commission and in European governments that want to see that end, and so they may do that too. And then the prices will rise that much higher.
That's wild.
Yeah, and
how does the EU? Can you explain the power of the European Union itself? Like, how does it exactly threaten these countries? It's able to make a decision just like this collectively, like we will no longer buy any gas at all from Russia. They're able to do that blanket wholesale for all of Europe?
Well,
isn't there autonomy for each country?
Yeah.
Can't they work out their own deals?
Yeah. That's what happened is that the EU tried to actually stop buying all Russian pipeline gas, and they had this great sanctions package and a series of them. But what happened was the Slovakia and Hungary said that we're not going to go along with this. We're not going to vote for these packages if you don't make an exception for our countries. And so the EU agreed to make an exception, for those two countries, and so they had been receiving a fair amount of Russian gas. Now, it's sort of like it's supposed to be unanimous, but the thing is, they also have a lot of levers. When you do something, like Hungary has angered the EC. They are just the people there hate Orban with a passion and want to bring him down, and they can do things. They can. For example, I think they just recently stopped providing grants to that Hungary had a right to, according to EU agreements. We're talking about a substantial, amount of money that was going from Brussels to Budapest. And that has been cut off, because they say it's because he didn't carry out certain court reforms and other things, and so they're penalizing him. But I think the main thing is that he's just been disobedient, especially vis-a-vis Russia. So they can do things like that to hurt these countries, and these countries are greatly dependent on Brussels in a lot of ways.
So is the main power kind of the ECB then, the European Central Bank, that they can cut off funds or funding to countries? Yeah. Is that the main?
I haven't actually heard that the ECB has played a role, but I suppose that potentially it could. It's just been the EC directly. We're not talking about loans. We're talking about direct grants.
So the EC is the European Commission?
The European Commission. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the European Commission in Brussels.
Okay, and they can just make decisions on any member state within the European Union on just
Yeah,
say
I mean,
we're
I
not
think
giving you.
you have to go through certain bureaucratic procedures that take some time, but they do it. Yeah, and they have recently cut off, the flow of funds to Hungary, and so that that puts Orban under a lot of pressure. It really does, and it
Could
gives
that
him it.
not push these countries more into BRICS and closer to Russia? I mean,
Well, there's the potential for that. It just, with Hungary, they're so deeply embedded, these countries that are already members, it's hard. You develop a dependence. It's kind of like, the states within the United States that used to be semi-sovereign, even after the Civil War. And they're not really even semi-sovereign now because all the states have become dependent on federal largesse. And I think it's the same thing within the EC, or the EU. It's going to be hard. I mean, it's not impossible. It's going to be hard. Now, a country like Georgia, which hasn't joined, they still have as their stated objective uh, to join. Their stated objective is to join the EU. But I think in truth that they are going to start looking at BRICS, and after their experience over the
right.
last year or so, and they can because they haven't made themselves dependent on the EU, so they can. I think they, if they're wise, they will try to solidify, their ties with the other powers, with the BRICS countries.
Right. I imagine the Georgians are furious with the West, the
Yeah,
majority of them, after what's happened. And I imagine the Slovaks and the Hungarians, most of them probably realize what's happening.
yeah,
You see the Western headlines, Russia cuts off gas to Europe. Well, but I think everybody knows that it was Ukraine and the US and the EU that made
right,
this decision to cut off
right,
gas to themselves and specifically targeting Slovakia and Hungary. So if
right.
you're a Hungarian, I'd be furious. And,
Yeah,
I'm sure they are. And I'm sure Viktor Orban and Fico have to be livid.
yeah,
And they might just say, you know what, we're done with the EU. We're
yeah.
out. We're moving
Yeah, I haven't.
away.
Yeah, well, potentially, I haven't heard any of those murmurings yet. But yeah, I can imagine if I was a citizen of one of those countries, say like, what kind of this is supposed to be about mutual benefit. We joined this because we're supposed to be part of a club where we help each other out, and it turns out that in fact, we're penalized. We're having our our economy is being ruined by this deliberately, by the leadership of this club that we've become a member of.
Right.
And you
And
say,
quite openly.
what kind of club is this? Who wants to be a member of that club? It's just like you go there and you get a beating or something.
Right. Well, it just seems like every decision that the West makes seems to backfire. So I'm just wondering how this is going to play out. It just seems like such a bad decision. First, it's hurting your own economies. It's going to
Yeah,
further add fuel to the dissident parties that you're afraid of. I mean,
yeah. Well, right. I saw today just on that topic. It was the head of the AfD. That is, AfD again. It's really the largest political party in Germany now. Has declared that if they take the reins of power, they will repair and reopen Nord. Well, and I guess it was never actually opened, but they will repair and put into operation Nord Stream 2.
okay.
And
I
so
was going.
that must be one reason why they are the leading political party in Germany. This I think most Germans say, yeah, please.
Right. Turn the lights back on. Let's get the heating going again. Let's get industry moving. It's just
Right,
such basic common sense. It's just
right.
there. It's unbelievable. You're strangling the economic growth of your own country purposely, and then one country says, "Hey, how about we, turn the lights back on and get things moving again?" It's like, of course, you want to vote for those people. So,
Right.
what would happen if the AfD won? Because that election's coming up pretty soon, right?
Yeah.
I believe in February.
Yeah, well, I think they almost certainly will win. They will get more votes than any other party, but they won't get a majority. And so they will not be able to form a government unless some other political party agrees to work with them. And unfortunately, at the present time, that's just not going to happen.
What if
So,
Sarah Wagenknecht, their leftist
yeah,
party? Do you think
I
that's
guess,
possible?
Well, I think they, unfortunately, and I wish they would, they have their own reasons. They too don't want to work with the AfD. In fact, the two parties do overlap on a lot. I think they have a fair amount in common, but there's this leftist allergy towards, the right wing, so called. And also, I don't think that Sarah Wagenknecht's party is actually doing very well. There's a chance that they might fall out of, they may fall below the threshold to have representatives within the Bundestag.
Okay, well, let's assume if by some chance they do get a majority, what would that do to the EU and just the
Yeah,
Ukraine
well,
war, everything?
I don't know. That would just it would create shockwaves, and there would probably, maybe we'll see something like we saw in Romania, where a court just annuls the election and say we can. Who knows? I mean, really, because that's what we've seen, right? There wasn't any tisking, wagging of fingers in Brussels when Romania did that. There was just complete silence, and if there were any expressions of, any expressed opinions about it, there were expressions of support. And so, it just reveals the way they think. Their idea of democracy is the right party wins and the wrong party wins, and we shut it down. That's democracy, so called. See, it's at some point they won't even try to call it democracy, but like,
Yeah, well, we'll see. I feel like this move is going to further boost the AfD, and it's possible by February that maybe they can even get a majority, and then you can't annul the German election's too big. Romania, not a lot of people don't know anything about it. Kind of just falls out of the news. You don't talk about it. But you're not going to be able to hide something like
yeah.
that in Germany.
Yeah, no, it would be a very major event. It would be a political earthquake in Europe.
Yeah. Can you
And,
tell me?
it's possible. I mean, both the National Rally in France and the AfD in Germany have been growing in size and power influence, over the last many years, and they are, they're not there yet, but they are approaching majority status, and I think one or the other eventually may get there.
These people that oppose the positions of like the AfD or the National Rally in France, are they? What is fueling them? Because it seems so obvious to us, and I feel like to most people, that the policies that these other the parties that are currently in power are not doing anything in the interest of their own country. It seems like it's just hatred of Russia, and they're just destroying their own economies, hurting their own people, moving towards authoritarianism. Where is that? How do people rationalize this? If the AfD can't get a majority, do you really think that the majority of Germans are supportive of the sort of the current establishment?
Yeah, well, it seems to be the case. A thin majority, if that, and it's the same thing. It's a shrinking majority and may soon cease to be a majority. But you have a lot of people that just have this instinctively trust the establishment. It was also true in this country, and yeah, a lot of things really don't make sense to them. They have they feel that things are moving in the wrong direction. But it's just like they feel it's their duty to support, the people in power, and the people in power are telling them that the AfD is very dangerous, or the National Rally, that they're crypto fascists, and if they're elected, they're going to start rounding people up and sending them to concentration camps and that kind of thing. In fact, if you look at the policies, I think of either of these parties, they're like typical, really like maybe center right policies from 20, 25 years ago. It's nothing far right or scary. That it's nothing like pre-World War Europe. But that's that's the fears that the establishment works hard to create. And it seems to be effective for a lot of people who just really don't bother to look beneath the surface and to be honest, don't really seem to have a kind of a mind of their own on these issues. But but as things get worse, as conditions continue to deteriorate, it's going to be harder and harder for the establishment to hold on. Europe's had a good long run of being a very, very prosperous part of the world. And so there's this residue of just sort of trust. Hey, this is a system that works. These guys have been in power since 1945 and we've really done quite well. Yeah, there's some problems now, but we got to stick with them. And they're telling us that these people over here are very, very dangerous. We better not. But I think, as the establishment continues to go down this self-destructive path, conditions will deteriorate and they'll deteriorate to a point where those kind of people are actually going to take the plunge and say this isn't working. There's something wrong here. I'm going to cast my vote for the AfD or for the National Rally.